Pops and the Rican.
Pops and the Rican.
Look at this. Pops and the Rican. The Pops and the Rican. What's the Pops and the Rican? Look at the top of his head. Pops and the Rican.
Pops and
What's going on?
Hey, everybody! Look at this.
Yes,
Hey, it's the Pops and the Rican
the Pops
show.
and the Rican show.
And because there's three of us, I'll clarify. I'm still Pops,
And I'm the Rican.
and we're the Pops,
Pops and the Rican show.
yeah.
That's right.
And then we've got a special guest because he flew in just today to be with us, not because he's in the area filming some big hot shot
Right.
Hollywood production
We'll talk
movie,
about that in
all
a
that kind of
second.
stuff. But hey, we're joined today by the one and only, the man of School of Laughs University podcast. I don't know what else you want to call it, but that School of Laughs thing that teaches everybody about everything to do with being funny and comedy stuff.
Yes.
Rick Roberts.
Rick
everybody.
Roberts, ladies and gentlemen.
Good to be here, fellas. What
Thanks
do you
for
know?
coming.
What do you know?
Welcome to the Pops and the Rican show and to Gutty's Comedy Club.
I
Yes.
like it. It's looking nice. Looking real nice.
Thank
We
you.
are thrilled to have you here.
Yes.
And so let's get things started first of all, because you've not been a guest on the Pops and the Rican show. Tell us just a little bit about Rick Roberts, how you got started in the field of comedy and jumping into the craziness that we like to do called comedy.
I started in 1991, the year of our Lord. It was June that year. I went to a place to play guitar one night. It said open stage in the Sunday paper. And so Sunday night there I was, 10 o'clock, went in there. And this was in Columbus, Ohio. And went in. It was kind of a room off the side of a bar. I was actually all in a bar called The Lobby in Columbus, Ohio. And I come in there and I got a little bit of a crowd, and I see a couple guys with guitars. I'm like, all right. So I signed up, and the lady says, since you're new, you'll be going first. You have about 7 minutes. I'm like,
That's
all right.
it.
But I was going there to play guitar. I didn't know anything about comedy. And she
Mm.
never said this is a comedy show where you'll be doing 7 minutes of stand-up. She
Mm.
just said,
Mm.
you're going first and you're doing 7 minutes. So I'm like, all right, I got probably 2 or 3 songs I can do. So I went out in the parking lot, practiced Bridge Over Troubled Water and Born to Be Wild. I thought that'd probably cover 7.
That'll work.
And so they never say welcome to the comedy show or anything. They just say that we're going to start now. And our first guy up is Rick Roberts. So I go up there and I play Bridge Over Troubled Water. And there was trouble under that water, under that bridge, because no one clapped at the end. And I'm not a great
Ooh.
singer, but I thought they would at least clap because I was done singing. And nothing. But then I'm like, I got you now. Sunday night, about 10:15 at this point, Born to Be Wild.
Mm.
All on acoustic, and finished that, and they're just staring at me. And I look at my watch, I got 2 more minutes to go. I still don't know it's a comedy show, so I just go, what do y'all want to hear? And somebody yells out with a lot of profanities interlaced, how about something funny? But funny was like the 18th word. There was a lot of other words in there. And I thought, well, it's kind of weird. So I'd written a song in college that was kind of funny called Beer Goggles. This is like back in 91 or whatever. And so I played that. They kind of laughed. And as I got done, the MC, who was this old cruise ship kind of dude, Donnie Lee Diamond, goes, did anybody tell you tonight was a comedy night? And I was like,
I know
what?
it dropped.
I mean, I turned white as a ghost. I
Oh,
almost passed
man.
out. I didn't even get my guitar case. I just took my guitar and went right out to the parking lot. I was getting ready to head home.
Mm.
But 2 guys came out and said, hey, dude, you get a free sandwich for going on stage. And I was kind of just out of college, pretty broke. I said, all right, I'll go in and eat my sandwich. I already ate it once.
Right.
And then I watched about 20 comics, 5 to
Mm.
7 minutes apiece. And what I had wandered into is an annual comedy competition where
Nice.
it goes in cycles. And at the end of the show, they bring everybody up, they give you points. And the more points you have, the later you go up in the show.
Oh.
So as the show went on, it got funnier and funnier. And I was hooked. And then at the end, they brought us all up, and I got a few votes. And the next week, I didn't have to go first, and I knew it was going to be comedy. So the second week,
A little bit better prepared.
better prepared,
Right.
but had less laughs the second week because now I was trying to do something that I was ill-equipped to do. but I knew I was going to get a half a sandwich at the end. And I was willing to work for it.
That's cool, man.
So that's the long story. But 1991, got my foot in the door. And by 92, I was full time.
I like that. I like that the fact that it wasn't as a big experience. Some people go, I went up on stage and I killed it, and it's like, okay, I want to know, was there anybody that went up there that was like, man, it was the worst experience ever? Because I didn't have, and that's how I experienced it too. Is I went up there thinking that because my buddies told me that I'm funny, I didn't have the structure. I didn't have what it meant to, to set up the punch. I didn't have the science behind it, and I was just going based on what they thought was funny, and everybody else was like, you're not funny. And that experience was like, oh my gosh, I don't ever want to do this again.
Yeah.
But at least, you had that experience, and like, but it still gave you were still kind of like hungry for it, right? Or you're just like,
Yeah.
well, you know what? Maybe I should try it. So you left. Did you go back again and just start writing? What was the whole process with that?
Yeah. So after that first night, Monday, I'm back at work, and I'm thinking, man, that was kind of fun. And I'd seen that, like, the winner of that night got like $150 or something. So I'm like, man, that's not bad for 7 minutes of work, So I thought, well, I'll go back. And I mean, I tried to write jokes, but all I knew was from what I had grown up hearing. And at that time, I was really into Dice Clay and Foxworthy.
Woo!
Okay.
So I remember one of my
A
first
nice mixture there.
bits. What if those two guys switched acts? Over the hills and through the woods, to grandmother's house we go. She's a redneck, It was just horrible. And then it's Foxworthy, like, if you go out there and do Mother Goose rhymes, you might be Andrew Dice Clay. It was just really bad.
Right.
And I didn't get any votes the second week at all. People were like, this guy's trying to be funny. He's not. Like the first week, people thought I was doing some kind of like Andy Kaufman thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I even had somebody tell me that, like, oh, that was like Andy Kaufman. I'm like, no, that was just bad
It
singing.
was horrible.
But yeah, it kind of gets
It
you
was just
hooked.
poor communication.
Very poor.
Yeah.
Very poor. But the first time I didn't have the pressure of trying to be funny, which got my feet wet. Had I known that it was a comedy night, I wouldn't have gone in the first place, and I wouldn't be sitting here 30 years later.
Woo.
But I kind of came in through the side door, as it were, and I'm like, this is a whole culture I didn't know about.
That's cool.
So
man.
at what point, how long ago did you start the School of Laughs then?
All right, so that happened when I moved to Nashville, which was around 99 or 2000, and I moved there. Brian Dorfman, who ran the club, who still owns the club, he was running the club. I didn't own it at the time, but he said, Rick, man, and I'd already worked for him in Chicago at Zany's and stuff, so we were kind of good buddies. He said, could you run a comedy class or a workshop for us? Because we're doing open mics and people are walking out. Like they would do an open mic and then have a headliner that got there early for the week or something. Or maybe the feature act was going to do the headlining spot on a Wednesday before the regular. But he's like, they're walking out before the main act gets up there because the open micers are so bad. They don't know a punchline. And I said, well, I don't think you can teach people to be funny. I just don't know how you do that. And to his credit, he goes, why don't you watch your show, watch it, at that time it was VHS, pause it when you get a laugh, and then figure out what made them laugh. Write that down and teach them that.
Wow.
And so we didn't have a big time deadline on it. He said, just do that, figure it out, and run the class. So the next month or so, that's what I did. Looked at all my tapes, looked at all my material that I could find on tape. And every time I got a laugh, I'm like, what made it laugh? And I'm like, oh, I used about 17 different techniques to trigger a laugh. And the jokes that worked every time had 2 or 3 of those techniques. The jokes that were hit and miss had none of the techniques. I just, either the crowd was with me or I was maybe a little sarcastic, and that kind of worked. But sarcasm is something you put on top of great writing. It's not something that you write into it. And so then after I learned that, I kind of went back through all the jokes that were 50-50 or didn't work at all and said, well, how can I make these work every time now? And I went back and applied those 17 or so techniques. Once I kind of figured out what those were, talked to some other comics, like, what do you call it when you do this? And like, oh yeah, that's a simile or that's a comparison or whatever. And then some didn't have a name. They were just things I were doing.
Right.
And so I kind of named those. And then that's what I taught and started doing that, probably in the year 2000, 2001. And since then, I was excited to see last weekend, 2 of my students were here at your club, headlining and featuring, I guess.
That's awesome.
That's quality education right there.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because that was a great show.
Well, June is very funny, and June is pretty fresh into it. She'd be the first one to tell you it's probably less than 2.5 years in.
I think she said about 2.5 years.
Yeah. And then Johnny, I think, had been doing just a tiny bit of stand-up when he took the class. His wife actually bought the class for him as a gift. And and I could tell he was going to be funny. He's a great wordsmith and still is today, and gets better at it all the time. But it's been fun to see people that take the class that are really driven, and then stick with it. I mean, I want to say at this point there's probably 12 or 15 full-time, or as full-time as they want it to be.
That's
People
awesome.
doing it. And
Well, it was fun for me for Johnny to be here because I don't remember 10 years ago, maybe it was, when I was trying to put together the stand up for our Heroes events.
oh yeah,
I know you did one of those here in the indie market with me. I had Johnny and CJ Harlow, who kind of dropped off the face of the earth.
was that his ghost that just went by?
Yeah. CJ Harlow and Johnny were on the show that we were doing out in the St. Louis area. And he was pretty fresh in the market then. I mean, he was doing some stuff, but he was kind of newer. And so to see where he's come since then, and to just how well he just crushed it this last weekend. I didn't realize that he was a student of the School of Laughs, but kudos to the great teaching, because he has stepped up his game and is really knocking it out of the park.
Well, he's the burger and I'm the ketchup. I mean, you got to have some meat to add some sauce to.
Yeah.
You know, that's the one thing with the class. Like, you got to bring the substance to it, and we'll tenderize it, we'll spice it up, we'll get it cooking, we'll tighten it up around the edges, we'll make it presentable. I'll usually say that it's like farming. You got to bring some seeds, and at the beginning you're picking stuff off somebody else's farm and planting those seeds, you know.
Yeah.
But once you have your heirloom seeds where you've had some cycles of growth, then you start to see better material more often, and then we can help you with that. And I've got exercises to help you generate material. But again, you have to be willing to do all that, and the ones that do, there's a payoff for sure.
Now that's interesting, because when it comes to teaching versus just pure talent, a lot of there's always a debate between, you can't really teach, to be funny. That's I feel like you definitely can increase your gift in comedy. I mean, if you have a gift, like you were saying, you got to bring something. You can't just out of nowhere. If you don't have any skill at all, being funny, then it's different. That's different. But when it comes to okay, if you know that you have a delivery and you have a voice or some kind of way to create a character, you got to have something where, okay, now I know that I'm funny. This lies with how my experience went from when I first did an open mic and it went bad. It wasn't necessarily the fact that I didn't have the gift to do it or the talent to do it. It's just I didn't understand the science behind it.
Yeah, you're very raw.
Right, exactly. And so the difference between, okay, yes, you should, and I'm a fan. We definitely support, going to school and getting the understanding of comedy. But at the same time, you do have to have some sort of gift or talent to be able to do this, or at least, go up on stage and be able to perform. So at what point in your career did you finally find your voice, as they try, because some of the people that follow us, they're always asking these questions. A lot of young comics that come to the club, they ask these questions. It's like, at what point, because I know now you actually add that character to as well, and we'll talk about it a little bit, but it's just, at what point did you reach that point where you're like, okay, this is my voice. I hear myself and I'm going to go with that.
Yeah. I mean, it changes for everybody, but I always thought I had it, but it always changed. So I'm in currently probably my 7th version of my voice. Early on, I was the voice of even though I was in my 20s, my comedy voice was like a teenager. Everything was smoking, drinking, whatever. That's kind of what I knew. And then as I got a little bit more mature, and especially after I got married, then I had a voice of a person who had lived a little bit of life, but still had the memories of what was going on back in the teen years. And now that I'm 52, I don't remember any of that. It's a whole new voice, because I'm in a whole other phase of life. But and that's kind of the beauty of it. Now I trust my voice more than before.
Okay.
Early on, I was probably sampling voices. Maybe like a new rapper was like, I like the hook on that song. And,
yeah.
Hey, Tainted Love's got to catch you. Boom, boom. I'll put that in this thing. And you're just borrowing all these things from different comics. You don't even know it most of the time. But then finally, it's usually your friends or somebody will say, oh, you kind of like the old guy who's been around, but you've got the fresh approach of the new guy still in you, or something like that. And you're like, oh, that is kind of what I am. And then you start writing for that. Or the edgy dad, or the whatever, the beat up husband. There's all kinds of these like tropes that you can be, but your voice, is in between those cracks. It's what do you find funny and the way you make it funny.
Yeah.
And so for me, that it bounces back between observational humor and family humor and a little bit of current events without the emphasis on the main event itself, but on the way that people are approaching it.
Mm.
So that's kind of where I find myself these days. And, maybe in 10 years, that's all gone. And that prepared me to be a storyteller. Who knows?
That's cool.
Yeah, I feel like I'm hitting that stage where I'm just going to be the grumpy old man.
Sure. Why do something different than what you are and what you know? I mean, you could do a different character, but I mean, the hardest thing is, like you say, finding your groove, your kind of point of view, where everything you think throughout the day, whether it's comedy or politics or going out to eat, just everything kind of settles in that groove, like the bottom of a ship.
Mm-hmm.
It all kind of lands there. What is that groove for you? And once you find it, just the more you put into that, it's going to be truer.
Right.
Mm.
And the stuff that's further out is still useful because you can surprise yourself and the audience, and all of a sudden you're way over here and they didn't expect it. But it still has a little bit of hint of your perspective that makes it sense for it to be in your show.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when I'm teaching comedy college. That's one of the things I try to make sure and teach is you've got to be authentic. Because your audience has great BS meters, and when they go off, there's like, I don't want to trust this guy. I'm not going on any journey with him.
Yeah.
And if you can't get them to go on a journey with you, you can't surprise them. You're kind of dead in the water, and so you gotta hunt for that voice of authenticity.
Yeah, I always say be yourself unless you're a jerk, and then dial it back a little bit. But there's some comics that are jerks on stage that are very successful.
Exactly,
Oh, yeah.
that's them.
But we don't want every show every night to be all jerks.
Right.
Or do we? I don't think so. We need variety.
No, I think what's unique about your career is the fact that now at what point did you switch over to start doing Barney Fife? Like that whole idea of I can take him and just embody him.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, bro, when I watched you, I'm like, this guy has it. Like you got him embodied. Like you work exactly, and you're everything about you when you do it is pretty amazing. So how did you get to that place where you're like, you know what? Now I'm going to add this to my repertoire.
I'll tell you, but I want to say this: my whole career has been green lights and red lights, and sometimes I'm giving myself the green light, sometimes other people have, and sometimes I've given myself a red light when other people didn't want one. And so the red light, like I would do some Barney Fife in the Midwest Comedy Tool and Die. We were an improv group that toured in the 90s. And we had a couple of scenes where you had to impersonate a celebrity for like a game show or something. And so I couldn't get in that scene because I didn't have anybody that I could impersonate.
Okay.
So I saw this little bus driver hat and I put it on one day, and I'm just goofing around backstage like, well, how's it going, everybody? And they're like, oh my gosh, where'd that come from? I'm like, I don't know, but it wasn't very good. Oh, but work on it. So I kept working on it.
Yeah.
Then I would do it in that show, and I got to the point where I could just walk out on the stage after we had a Ross Perot impersonator, and then we had 2 or 3 different ones, Jerry Lewis, or it could be Paul Schaefer. Then I would come out, and I would just look at the crowd like, well, how's it going? And the place would just go crazy. And I'm like, oh, man, maybe I should keep working on this. So I started recording the episodes on audio tape, and I put them in my car, my truck, and I play them, and I just play a little bit, rewind it, and try to match the way he goes up. He's got the roller coaster,
Yeah.
Well, I don't like the way that's going right there, and I'll tell you why here in a second. Like he has that whole range, but I couldn't do the high part at the beginning.
Okay.
So my 2 roommates, Miguel and Mark, at the time, I just said, hey, buddies, I'm going to annoy the heck out of you for a couple of weeks or a month, but I'm going to be screeching, trying to get my voice to be able to crack. And they played along. And then I got invited to do Dave Thomas. Remember Dave Thomas, founder of Wendy's?
Yeah.
To appear at his birthday party as Barney Fife, because he was a big Barney Fife fan.
Oh, man.
And so I went and did that for him, and I had a horrible costume. I mean, it didn't look anything like it, but he could see that I was getting the impression down. And we sat in a corner at his birthday party for about 35 minutes. I mean, there's everybody in the world there, but he just wanted to talk about the Andy Griffith Show.
Huh.
And so that's probably the first time I realized that, even though I love the Andy Griffith Show, I didn't realize how many other people had that deep affection for it.
Yeah.
And after we talked for a while, he goes, I've got to get backed up. People can get mad at me but I could sit here and talk about this all night. He goes, but young man, this was probably like in 96 or 7. He goes, there's a thing out there that's hitting big now called the internet. You got to get your website and put Barney Fife or something like that in the title so people can find you and take some pictures and do this. Well, that's a guy who knows how to run a business. So the next day I went and I asked somebody, how do you get a website? And I
Yeah.
listed a bunch of names, found one. And, in my comedy show, I just kind of drop in and out of the character in one particular bit.
Yeah.
But for corporate events, sometimes I'll come in the room, interrupt the CEO while he's giving the State of the Union address. And I got some arrest warrants to hand out. And I call up these other people,
Yeah.
arrest them, and then I disappear and come back in my clothes for my stand-up show later. But, on occasion, I'll do trade shows where I hang out in the booth as Barney Fife. Not very often because it's like an 8-hour day on your feet,
Yeah.
But sometimes if it's a good fit, like there was a time I worked with 911 Incorporated. They did software for call centers. I'm like, that's kind of a good fit. Their slogan was, if Fife can learn it, so can you, or something like that.
Nice.
And then I just kept occasionally making videos, but I would have never had the green light. Like Dave Thomas gave me the green light on that. My friends gave me the green light. Hey, you should work on that a little bit more. And to me, it's like the show was over in '68, and I started comedy in '92, 91.
Yeah.
So in my head, there was like at least a caution light going off, like, why invest your time in something that's so far in the past? But that brings us to today, where people are revisiting that and want more of that.
And
right, makes
the
sense.
fact that they continue to want to have more Mayberry is part of the reason you're here in the area right now. Tell us a little bit about the process of how'd you get invited, or how'd you get cast to be a part of the movie. What's the name? Mayberry Man? Is that the name?
Mayberry
of the movie?
Man.
Okay,
Mhm.
so Mayberry Man, and you guys are filming right now.
Yep.
Well, not right this moment because we
yeah,
get
of
kicked
course
off,
not.
we get kicked off the set. Although it'd be cool if they were here on
Sure.
our stage at Gutty's. That'd be fun.
Right.
But how'd you get cast, and how'd you get involved in that movie?
Well, there's two guys. Their dad had been on the show a few times, on the Andy Griffith Show, and Stark and Court Howe are the two guys behind the movie. So Stark had gone to one of these Mayberry festivals. There's one in Danville, Indiana. There's one in Mount Airy. There's some others around the country. But he went there to kind of honor his dad. I can't remember if at the time his dad was still signing autographs or not, but he just encountered this culture of these fans that they knew every line to every episode. And he just thought, man, what a sweet bunch of people. And then he thought, I wonder if this could be a movie, about a guy like me who didn't know what it was like. He comes in, he was skeptical at first, and he's like, oh, through the course of these 3 or 4 days, it kind of changed the way he looked at people. So he wrote the script Mayberry Man with, it's what it is not is it's not a reboot of the Andy Griffith Show, and we're not doing that.
Okay.
But it's a guy going to one of these Mayberry festivals. I'm not Barney Fife. I'm a Barney Fife impersonator,
Okay.
which takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Big time.
So this character goes through the process of meeting all these people and whatnot. And so how I got cast, I'm pretty sure I was like third or fourth choice.
Okay.
There's one guy that had been, his name's David Browning, who does a phenomenal Don Knotts Barney Fife impression. But he's a little bit older, didn't want to travel as much. And I think I heard he had promised Don Knotts that he would never play him in a movie. Why he made the promise, I don't know. But and he wouldn't be if he took this role anyway, because he's playing a Barney Fife impersonator.
Right.
But anyway, he didn't do it, and there may have been one or two others. And then when Stark Howe called me up, he goes, hey, I've been looking at your videos. We're doing this Mayberry Man movie. You wouldn't be playing Don Knotts, but you'd be playing what you do when you go do some of these gigs, Barney Fife impersonator. The other guys we're looking at, they can do Barney Fife, but I don't think they have improv background like you do. I know you could add a few lines here and there that'll help the movie out, that kind of thing. And we really think you look like him when you have it all put together, so it doesn't hurt to do that either. So there was really no audition. He said, do you want to do it or not? And I couldn't originally do it because the schedule was going full steam ahead in January, and they were going to tape in May, and I was already booked for a lot of stuff. But then when shutdown happened right there, first couple of weeks of March, they had to move May to this week, and we started on it's a 14-day shoot here, so I'm in the middle of that right now. But my schedule miraculously opened.
Yeah.
I had to move 2 things, but they became virtual events anyway, and I could pre-record them. So it made that possible. We've been shooting, like I say, we're day 7 out of 14 here, and it's just been a blast. There's no egos on the set. It's exactly what you would think a bunch of people who love Mayberry would be doing.
That's cool.
And we've got Chris Bowman, who I know you know, is doing
Gomer.
And I think that was a case too, where there was a Gomer Goober pair that does all these Mayberry festivals together.
Okay.
And one had senior parents and didn't want to take a risk of bringing something back to them.
Right.
So that opened up a spot for Chris, just like I had a spot open up for me.
Nice.
And I got to tell you, man, he's great.
He's
Just
fun.
and he's added just a lot of fun off the scenes, you
Yeah,
know,
really
in
cool
between
guy.
as well.
Yep.
So it's just been a blast, and it's one of those things. Again, I didn't find it on the internet and pursue him. You know, if I'd known it, I probably wouldn't pursue him. But it's just somebody gave me a green light to come on here and do this. I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Well, I think it's cool that people who are looking for a Barney Fife impersonator there's enough material out there showing the quality connection that you have to that character, so they were pursuing you to be part of the movie. You know,
Yeah.
and that's when it comes to honing your craft and really working on getting better at what you do. It speaks to the effort and the work you put into making your impersonation of Barney Fife as real and authentic as possible, that people were seeking you out for the movie.
Yeah, I mean, thanks. I think what helps with that is, well, for this particular thing, I know some comics that do some maybe Barney Fife things where it's pretty filthy or dirty, and so I always wanted to honor what he did, because I mean, he was a comic genius. I don't want to come in and get a cheap laugh by saying something ridiculous, you know.
Okay.
Right.
So that I felt good about having if they found anything of me doing Barney Fife, it would be wholesome. And then the other thing, I guess, micro business lesson in there is, you probably hear this from new comics, like, should I put stuff online or should I not put stuff online? Well, if it's decent and people can hear and see what you're doing, put it up. And when you get something new and better, take it down and put that in there. You
Right.
know?
Yep.
But if you don't people can't find you if you don't have a sign.
Yeah.
You're not a
Makes
store. You got to have something where they can track you down. So you'll get better. And when it's bad, they're not going to call you because it's bad. So you won't be going, I can't do it, because they're not going to offer it to you.
Yeah.
But once you can, they'll see it and they'll reach out.
That makes sense. And the good thing about the fact that we've been preaching that too as well. You got to be online. You got to be visible. You got to go on there. You got to make sure that you're connected on all social media platforms, just because that's the way it is right now. Everything is pretty much instant. And if you're not out there, you're not giving yourself a chance to with the opportunity now to talk about how did you choose to start doing clean versus staying away from blue, because we talk about the differences between the two, because of the fact that that's the product that we create here at Gutty's, is that we like to bring clean comedians in, because we just felt that this product and this side of comedy is not as strong. So we wanted to bring that to the forefront. But at what point did you just say, you know what, I'm just going to go all out clean, just because, this is where it's at? And, if you could share a little bit of insight on your decision in that, would help big time.
Yeah, I've always been, as far as comedy considered, definitely on the clean side. Early on, I wasn't thinking about it. And when I would do a joke that was blue, or there's the whole category of jokes that are late night tavern.
Yeah.
To survive in the early days, I needed a few of those in my back pocket.
Okay.
But what I would, when you're doing 3 shows and you're in these places where they didn't expect comedy and all that stuff, for me, I was just trying to keep the momentum going to get the feature act up or the headliner. So I'd do whatever I could, and they were way filthier than me. So I would occasionally say something, but I never wanted to. And what I would try to do is, even in the first year, I think, of going full time, is just to weed all that stuff out, and because nobody needs an MC that's blue at all.
Right.
And I was doing even early some 2-man shows where I was doing like 35, and I had no business doing it. And that's when I would find myself trying, needing something there to get over the hump at the end. But once, I think the really clarifying moment for me was probably in 2001 when I did, there was a show called Bananas.
Yeah.
And it was distributed, and it was marketed as a Christian comedy show. And I'm a Christian. I mean, that's why I started off cleaner anyway.
Oh, okay.
But when I did that, they said, can you be 100% squeaky clean? And I looked at my act, I'm like, that I was currently doing. I'm like, yeah, it's 100% squeaky clean now. It might be too clean. When I was doing clubs, they're like, you're too clean.
Yeah.
You need to say something in there. And so I did that. They recorded it. They distributed it and stuff. And in the back of my head, I just thought, if somebody saw that show and came to see me because of that taping, and I was less than that, then I would feel like I let them down.
Right.
So I wanted to be better than what was at that time my best moving forward.
Yeah.
And as cleaner, or have more, at least, I don't know, better jokes faster, cleaner, more. So what I did is I swapped out anything dirty and just added energy and stronger twists. And
Yeah.
that was the key, and that's what I kind of learned towards the end of the '90s. Is I needed stronger misdirections and to whittle down some of the setup a little bit.
So over the years, I'm sure that you've come across people that you look at and you say, well, they kind of became a mentor. They gave you some sage advice or whatever. What's the best piece of advice that somebody gave to you, helping you get to the point where you are now in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's just little bits of advice that kind of pop up over the years, and then sometimes I can't remember who gave them to me. But some of the things that kind of pop up right now are everything can be funny, not everything is, which is the Rubik's Cube of comedy, but, and I think that's one of those things I look at, and when I've got an idea and I haven't got it to where I need it to be, I know that everything can be funny, but at the moment, maybe this isn't, either because I can't tell it the right way, I haven't developed the writing skill to pull off such a tough joke maybe, or, comedy plus time, tragedy plus time equals comedy. Sometimes the comedy comes way too close to the tragedy and you can only tell other comedians. So, that piece of advice was good. And then sometimes it wasn't the advice, but I just watched what happened to other comics and try to not do that. Like just from the business side, I was working with one guy who was selling stuff after the show and was bragging on stage that he's not claiming any of this on his taxes. Well, there was a guy from the IRS in the audience. He got sued for back taxes, and we're talking several $100,000.
Oh,
Wow.
man.
So I'm like, okay, penny for penny, everything I sell, I'm going to put down in the ledger and spreadsheet.
Yep.
Not even realizing at the time that this is actually going to be beneficial to me when I go try to get a mortgage for my house or qualify for this or whatever. So some of those mistakes I definitely avoided from seeing people fall through. And another one was don't love your work more than you love your family, because then both things will be hated. You'll hate your work and your family will hate you, because you can never get enough work. I know people try to put 450 dates into a 365-day year. Well, if you haven't found something that's filling you up on the inside by now, comedy ain't going to be the thing. And then if you're gone that much,
That's
your
good.
family's left you already.
That's good.
So those are just some things that pop out.
Yeah. And I will say, with age, you learn things that you begin to offer then as advice, because you've kind of learned from your own mistakes and that. What piece of advice have you kind of learned over the process that you're like, okay, the best thing I can give to you, the best gift I can give to you is what?
What I tell my students and now, or any new comic who might be listening, is you have to love writing jokes. If that's the grind for you, then get out right now, because it's always going to be the grind for you.
Right.
If you don't enjoy that, the comedy and the laughs and the travel and maybe income and all those things are byproducts of you loving to sit there and try to figure out how jokes work. Trying to make the same 5 minutes work for 3 years.
That's good.
You see this at open mics all the time.
Yep.
They pop in every 3 months. They do the same 5 minutes that didn't work last time. And they're bitter because that guy's feature now, or that lady's headlining now. And they started at the same time I did. But guess what? They kept writing jokes and got rid of the ones that didn't work or made them better. You're doing the same 5 minutes. You can't part-time comedy.
Right.
And you certainly can't on-ramp that way. You can't piece together 6 sets a year and start becoming a opening act. I mean, we're talking 6 sets a week for a couple of years. That's what you need to be doing.
Right.
And if you don't have that kind of stage time, start your own. That's the other advice to give. And a lot of my students in Nashville have started over the years their own open mic. They find venues, that have a down night. Find a club that's not open on Tuesday. Say, you guys take the door, I'll take the stage. But get up there and do it. If you don't like that, then you're not going to last. So don't fool yourself. I can't play pro baseball. I could get out there and take classes all I want, but I'm not going to grow, and I'm not going to have the aptitude for that, and the age and all the other things. Even though I might enjoy the grind, So you might enjoy the grind and still not be able to do it if that's the case. Learn. If you not take a class, get with other comics, have your own writers' nights, and just learn the stuff that you don't know so that you do enjoy the process more. Yeah. But don't clog the wheels with, there's too many people who are just sitting there doing the same thing, and I hate to see it. I love the people, but after a while, you're just fooling yourself and nobody else at this point. So come and be a fan of comedy. Support somebody else. That's nothing wrong with that.
and it's interesting because tonight we are actually in the middle of our Gutty's comedy stand-up comedy wars right now, and what we did we paired up 3 guys to be in a team, and then that's team head-to-head against other teams, and basically we give them 30 minutes, and in that 30 minutes they can put together their show as to however they want to do that. Okay. And when we announced that we were doing it, people were like, oh, okay, that sounds great. Then it came time for us to actually start it. And a lot of the open mic comics were coming in. They're like, wait a minute, that's on Thursday night. That's our open mic night. What do we do?
Yeah.
And I said, well, come and watch and be supportive and learn from the guys that are actually putting time in enough that maybe they're only doing 10 minutes each.
Yeah.
But they're doing something where they've put together a solid 10-minute set so that they could be part of this competition to actually have a good showing to hopefully see their team go on, because the crew that wins, the 3-man's crew that wins a cash prize, the golden microphone trophy, and free entry into the main event for World Series of Comedy.
Nice.
And so they're putting some effort in to earn that prize.
Yeah.
And so you come watch. And it was interesting because we had a handful of open mic comics that were here last Thursday night because they wanted to see and wanted to learn. The other ones, I don't know where they went or what they were doing, but it's part of that process. If you can't do the time to write and hone your skill and get better, then, like you say, at least support comedy and learn from the people that are putting in their effort.
Yeah.
So when you're ready to sit down and actually put in the work, you at least have a better idea of what can be done because you've seen the success of other people putting in the work.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, if you can't do it, come out and support the ones that are.
Yeah.
I mean, and what I don't see enough of, which I would love to see more of, is maybe you just realize that the grind isn't for you, but you like the comedy. What skill set do you have that you can help that other person elevate?
Exactly.
Are you a killer web designer? Can you help them with SEO? Are you great at networking? Can you cold call somebody and sell them the idea of having a comedian come in for their corporate event? There's nothing wrong with you taking other skills you have and helping somebody else's flame grow a little bit brighter, and you'll be right there basking in it too.
Yeah.
So, we talked a little bit about School of Laughs and all of that. How can people find out more about you, about your comedy, and how can people learn more about the School of Laughs and what they can learn there? Because I know you've got the podcast, but then you also have classes and all that kind of stuff. How do people find you and find out more about all of the things that you're involved with?
Sure. For everything comedy teaching wise and classes, and I've got online classes they can start tonight if they want. And I've started doing virtual where we're doing it live together. So I don't like to call those online because to me the online class is online all the time. But I've got those things going on. They can go to schooloflaughs.com. It's all regular spelling. No crazy laughs or any of that. It's not SKOOLO laughs. But the crazy spelling comes on mine. It's rickroberts.com, and it's RIK Roberts. Because when I signed up for websites, the Rick was taken, the Ricky, the Richard. So I had to drop the C, grab the K, and that's what I've got. So RIKRoberts.com. And I believe you can search the @ with Rick Roberts and @ School of Laughs and find that on Twitter. And if you like looking at pictures of farms, you can go to my my Instagram page because I like to take pictures when I'm out traveling.
Nice.
Let me encourage you, if you're watching or listening to the audio version of this, if you're looking to learn more about just some fundamentals of writing or performing stand-up comedy, go back and listen to episodes of the School of Laughs podcast. It'll be well worth your time, and it's completely free to go back and listen to those past episodes. And so if you can get a master's level education and it's free, well, I don't know why you wouldn't want to go back and learn, because Rick does a great job with his guests and with his own teaching in the process. Through the School of Laughs podcast, you're getting a master's level education. So take advantage of it and learn from somebody who's been doing this for a day or two and is finding quite a bit of success in the process.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Rick, you got anything else you want to share before we wrap up today's episode?
You know, we talked about the Mayberry Man movie. If you want to learn more about that, it's mayberrymanmovie.com. If you're a Facebook person, you can search the hashtag Mayberry Man without the movie, just Mayberry Man, hashtag Mayberry Man, and see some pictures from the shoot, the set, and there's an occasional little video that they put out. I think they're hoping to release that in the spring. And there's also still opportunities if people want to support. It was kind of a crowdsourced movie deal. So there's things you can get, hats, posters mentioned in the credits, that kind of thing, if they want to support it. And they can go to support Mayberry Man movie, maybe.com. But if you just search that hashtag, you'll learn more about it. And if you live in Indiana, man, this is just Danville is such a great, you could not have built a movie set to look more like the town of Mayberry. And that's part of the reason they shot it here and not in Mount Airy. If you've ever been to Mount Airy, they've got all this, Aunt Bee's Diner, they got everything in the world there. But it's kind of a touristy caricature version of Mayberry, whereas Danville is just straight up. That they changed some storefronts out to make it look a little tighter, but man, great setup.
People will drive through Danville just to see the sheriff's car that always sat right outside of the cafe there. Even when people would be driving through and they'd crash into the sheriff's car because they've had to repair it and repaint it. I don't know how many times, but
I heard a great story about that car, and you may know this already. But when they first started parking the sheriff's car out in front of the Mayberry Cafe right there on the corner, the city didn't. It was occupying a parking spot basically.
Right.
And so they said, you can only park here for an hour. So what I heard was they would let people who came in to the restaurant say, you want to drive it around the block. And when they drove around the block, it reset the hour. They would stand in the parking space basically till they made the circle around the courthouse. They pulled back in and the timer started again. And so eventually the city, I think, just said, all right, just park it there, tag on it. But I think the city realized people were coming just to see it, like I said. And it did have a few bumps and bruises along the way. But great little town.
That's awesome.
So what's it going to take to get Rick Roberts, comedian, to grace the stage of Gutty's Comedy Club for a weekend?
I think 60% vaccination rate, and then I'm in. I'm not afraid of catching a virus, and 99.9% of the time, or whatever it is, most people can beat it. That they had it, all that stuff. I'm just wary of bringing it back to my kids. I'm kind of worried about my kids bringing it back from school.
Sure.
We can't see my parents. Haven't seen my parents since February because they're both in the condition where a little thing like just one little drop of that probably knock them both out. So, but when things get a little more clear, tight spaces, long durations, I'm in like Flynn. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it right now. The way you got it set up here looks beautiful, but I'm just kind of waiting it out.
I understand completely.
Well, and what we'll do is we'll advertise it as the teacher versus the student. We'll give everybody who came and saw Johnny W. They can decide whether you're better. We'll throw a little competition down.
Right.
It's the grasshoppers now teaching the whatever. But what we could do is maybe run a little workshop on the weekend or the afternoon after the weekend wraps up or something, and do some kind of little boot camp and kind of encourage some people to go a little bit further than they are.
Yeah,
well,
that would be awesome.
We've done that. We had Joel Byers with Hot Breath. He came in, and then on the Saturday before the evening show, Saturday afternoon, he did a podcast or a session on how to start a podcast or how to get a crowd for your podcast, whatever. So he was sharing what he's learned in terms of how he grew Hot Breath.
Yeah.
And so we're definitely open to doing some teaching.
Yeah.
While we're trying to also draw the crowd to have some laughs.
Sure.
During the prime time show time. So,
did he tell you how he got the Hot Breath name?
I don't remember if he told us that or not.
So I asked him that because we've been on a couple of podcasts. He's come to my office and we've swapped podcast or whatever you call it before. But I asked him, like, what's up with the name? And he goes, well, NPR has fresh air. I've got hot breath. But I don't think people know that, so I wanted to put that out.
That's good. All right, we got to hit him up.
It's Terry Gross with fresh air, and I'm just got Gross hot breath.
It's all good. Hey, thanks again, Rick. We really appreciate you coming out and hanging out with us here on the Pops and Rican Show. If you don't know, make sure that you jump online. Make sure you go to schoolofblast.com. Follow Rick everywhere. You're going to find him. He does all kinds of stuff online. The man is amazing, especially with his Barney Fife impersonation. You definitely want to follow that. And if you haven't already, download the mobile app because you'll know exactly what shows are going on here at Gutty's Comedy Club. You can watch it live. Now that we are at 50% capacity, we definitely want to reach out to everybody else who hasn't been at one of our shows. We go live, and we also broadcast live of all our shows Friday, Saturday nights. So if you want to watch what's going on here at Gutty's Comedy Club and watch all this great comedy that's coming through, you can check us out online. If you're out of state and you want to check out what's going on here at Gutty's, you can do so by going to guttyscomedyclub.com/live, and you can check out a live broadcasting of our shows as well. So it's been a great show. I thank you again. I really appreciate you, Rick, for coming out and hanging out with me, man. And
I guess that's pretty much the end. So we should probably say I'm still Pops. Even after all of that, I'm still Pops.
Yeah, and I'm the Rican.
And this has been
Pops and the Rican
Show. Deuces.
Pops and the Rican.
Pops and the Rican.
Look at this. Pops and the Rican. Pops and the Rican. What's the Pops and the Rican?
Look at the top of his head.
Pops and the Rican.